In this video, I'm going to be explaining everything you need to know about the Citadelle Day More ending cutscene as well as the important lore for the map. There has been a ton of new story information to take in, and boy did we start out big. Because there is literally so much lore, I'm going to have loads of videos going way more in depth than this video. So this video is going to touch on some of the very important topics, but this is really just scratching the surface. So I'm going to play the cutscene for you now, and then we'll jump in talking about it.
Krafft, we need to know, what do we do with the amulet?
Take it to the excavation site. But beware the Sentinel artifact. It could consume you.
And Richtofen, where is he? We know he contacted you.
Please don't kill him. He is my son.
He's your what?
I don't think he knew he was raising a monster. Until it was too late.
And the Digsite he mentioned. It is not far.
So this is absolutely crazy. Now, if you've listened to the intel in the game prior to doing the Easter egg, this cutscene wouldn't have come as much of a shock to you, as one of the first intel that I found exploring the map was so big I knew the topic was going to require a video on its own. But there's no need to be coy. As you saw from the ending cutscene, Eddie Richtofen, sometime after coming to this new world, was adopted by Gabriel Krafft. How insane is this? And we literally called it! As you will have seen in my videos, for some time I've theorized on the possible connection between Krafft and Richtofen, and it's now come to fruition. I honestly wanted to do a whole video talking about this, but I never got around to it, and only briefly touched on it in videos, and I really only had a slight inkling about this, and yet all of a sudden it's just come true, like, straight away. It's crazy. I mean, I literally was 5 minutes into my game, and it was literally the first intel I saw, immediately confirming everything. Also, Citadelle Day More already teases the original characters returning already, which, as you know, it was leaked to be for COD 2025. I didn't think we would get any teasers so far in regards to them at all just yet. Anyways, I'm going to play the important intel for you now to listen to.
The boy is having nightmares again. The terrible things. He wakes drenched in sweat, screaming that it's his turn. He does not remember in the morning. I am beginning to wonder if he is actually taking the pills or if he is just lying to me. Either way, the boy needs a fresh start. Something to help him forget the things that haunt him. Perhaps we both do. Weeks ago, I applied to a project in America. My background in the occult and my unique field experience make me a perfect candidate. I can't say too much even here, but the work is exciting. An excursion along the frontiers of science. The CIA are calling it MK Ultra. I haven't heard back yet, but I'm keeping my hopes high. This could be exactly what Eddie and I need. Perhaps in America we can find a way to end the nightmares. For both of us.
This has absolutely incredible implications across basically the entire Dark Ether story. This helps us to begin to really understand the most mysterious time in this saga and exactly what happened in Eddie Richtofen's early life. This connection with Krafft and Eddie helps tie together a tumultuous and unknown time in the Dark Ether storyline, helping us come to grips at just how Eddie's character got to this dark place. From what we learn here, Eddie was adopted by Krafft sometime after arriving in this new timeline. It seems this era was likely around 1953, as this was when MK Ultra research began under the US government, and of course we know that is the project that Krafft is later hired by the Americans to work on. He found Eddie at an orphanage, and for some reason Krafft only adopted Eddie. We know his partner, Sasha, wanted a son to adopt, so it could just be for some reason they didn't want a daughter, I don't know, but Sasha long since passed and he was just trying to continue on his legacy. And we also have this document intel on Eddie Richtofen's intake paper at the orphanage, and we can see the exact day that Eddie was taken into the orphanage being the 8th of October 1954. And Krafft specifically says he looks to be around 10 years old at the time he picked him up. Now of course we don't know how long he was in this new universe before he was taken to the orphanage. I can just imagine the day of these two lost children wandering around the streets, potentially just going from random family to random family before being picked up by the police at some point, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe even they survived homeless for some time. And also in the intel, he specifically talks about Dr. Monty's house, but I'm going to make a whole video talking about the house in the future. This is just sort of a quick roundup of all of the important details, and that deserves a whole conversation on its own on the mansion map and how Eddie's memories of Monty's house are important. And it does seem they have changed the date that we suspected, because we assumed that they would just go with the Tag the Totem date of around 1964, so Eddie and Sam would enter this new world concurrently. However, instead, it's a decade earlier. This could be just because they needed more time to flesh out Eddie's backstory, so they needed to allow him to have some extra time in this universe so they can fill in those gaps of his experience with Krafft. But I do wonder if there's any important dates in between this time as to why the date is pushed back there, because you have to think, this is a completely random date, 1954. If the universe has existed for billions of years, what are the odds they just so happen to come back into this new universe in a date that just so happens to be around when our general storyline is taking place? The only way that would have made sense is if it was concurrent with Tag the Totem, because then there would be a reason why there would be that specific date. But now it just seems like convenience for storyline purposes. But it seems that when Eddie entered this new universe, he had memory loss, unable to remember his parents or his origins, and could only remember his name was Eddie. However, even despite the memory loss, his personality remains intelligent and well-spoken, and Krafft is enchanted by the boy, which is why he chooses to bring him home as a son to fill the hole left by the death of his partner Sasha, thanks to Von Liss.
When we were young, Sasha and I often spoke of children. It was our dream. A cottage in the country, plenty of land where we could raise our little boys the right way. But there was school, and then there was work, and then Sasha never got that little boy. So I went to an orphanage in the city today. For Sasha. There was a boy. A sickly, starved thing like all the rest, maybe 10 years old, but there was something in his eyes. I spoke to him for hours. He reminds me of Sasha. Sharp, logical, a dreamer at heart. They would have loved each other. The boy suffers from memory loss. His childhood, his parents all gone. His name, Edward, is the only thing he has left. He doesn't understand the world, but he wants to. We're alike in that way. He's asleep now in the spare bedroom. My adopted son. I don't know what comes next. But we're in this together now, my Eddie and I. For better or for worse.
This connection helps explain a lot. We figured out in a prior video based on Arthurian legend that if Krafft was this storyline's representation of Merlin, he must have had some sort of father figure or tutor role to Eddie. And I did suggest potentially him being the adoptive father, but I was leaning more towards the mentor role, but he is literally his adoptive father, and this helps us to understand why Eddie had such high amount of knowledge in Krafft's research, even at the beginning of Requiem, having all of his documents in the archives. Eddie also likely benefited from Krafft's US government connections, landing him the high-ranking position in the DS&T he had before the founding of Requiem. Now, Eddie's potential memory loss here is very interesting, because if he and Sam did both lose their memories, it would explain why he did not request Krafft to also adopt her and did not feel bad for leaving her there. And it's also important because I've been speculating in recent videos potentially Sam just experienced amnesia when she went into the Dark Ether on Firebase C. But the fact that Eddie had his memories lost suggests that Sam similarly also did not have her memories the entire time, apart from through dreams. Although there is plenty of evidence to suggest here that he may have simply been lying to Krafft to protect himself or his knowledge of the Dark Ether. For one, he still goes by Richtofen as an adult. If he only knew his name was Eddie, he wouldn't have knowledge of that name to be able to go by. But it could just be that he regained these memories later. For example, this may be how. Here we get a deeper look at just how much Eddie may remember. During nightmares, Krafft says he hears Eddie talking about it being his turn.
The boy is having nightmares again. The terrible things. He wakes drenched in sweat, screaming that it's his turn. He does not remember in the morning. I am beginning to wonder if he is actually taking the pills or if he is just lying to me. Perhaps in America we can find a way to end the nightmares. For both of us.
I absolutely cannot believe they referenced this here. This is literally Treyarch following up on an 11-year-old story arc from the Origins ending cutscene. Eddie is finally getting his turn in this game all these years later.
What's the choice of it, children? Make sure the windows are locked before you come down to the basement.
We'd better do what your dad says. I didn't even get my turn.
It leaves a lingering question. If the memories are seemingly buried deep into his subconscious, how does he now seem to know it all? We hear from the intel prior that Krafft was moving to America, like I say, to work on a very specific program, MK Ultra. In this intel, he says this.
I haven't heard back yet, but I'm keeping my hopes high. This could be exactly what Eddie and I need. Perhaps in America we can find a way to end the nightmares.
This could fix Eddie. Could it be that Krafft uses MK Ultra research to try and solve Eddie's nightmares and as a result unlocked his memories of the ether once he was a young man? This is strengthened by the idea that Eddie, upon capturing Samantha in Block 8 and trying to awaken her powers, immediately began similar interrogation and torture techniques to that of MK Ultra. And in fact, if you listen to Samantha's and Eddie's dialogue when he's interrogating her, it's literally mirroring when Hudson was interrogating Alex Mason. So it's meant to be a clear reference to that. And Richtofen then used seemingly similar interrogation techniques on the Samantha Maxis AI.
July 14, 1989. The time is 9:35 a.m. and I am going to attempt to synchronize the synaptic algorithm module's lower and higher functions for the first time. Commencing low-level startup procedures.
Voice routines online. Memory interface online. Systems interface online. Loading memory lattice. Loading complete.
So far, so good. Let's align, synchronize, and then start her cortex simulation.
Loading cortex scans. Loading complete. Synchronizing fabric. Synchronization complete. Adding cortex daemon to process list. Rebooting.
How are you feeling, Sam?
Where am I?
Voice modulation will need to be modified. Recalibrate GPS. She shouldn't need to ask where she is. You are with friends. My name is Edward. You are my guest.
Good afternoon, Edward.
You just arrived. I'm looking forward to spending time together. Tell me, what do you remember before waking up?
I remember a knife. A promise I couldn't keep. A morning that would never come.
Do not worry. You are safe here.
Blood on my hands. But where are my hands? I don't understand.
Sam, those sound like nightmares. They are not real.
How? How do I know what's real and what isn't?
Because I will help you. Would you like that?
Yes, I would like that very much. Thank you, Eddie.
Krafft was hired by the CIA to work on MK Ultra because of his knowledge of demonology, and we learn on this map that demonology has actually been a key element of the Dark Ether corruption all along, meaning that the entire Black Ops campaigns literally only exist because of zombies and the connection to the Dark Ether, and it makes complete sense why this campaign has so much zombie influence, and why even Adler in Cold War saw zombies during a hallucination, because it seems like these hallucinations all along were connections to the Dark Ether, which honestly deserves a whole video on its own in the future. But this is mind-blowing how zombies is completely changing our perspective on the campaign stories here, and I think that this is so interesting as well because it's bringing everything full circle that Craig Houston wrote for Black Ops 1's campaign, and he mainly does zombie stuff now, and he's incorporating a lot of these elements and bringing them together. But the thing is, if Krafft did these experiments with MK Ultra on Eddie to try and rid him of his nightmares, this could explain the distance between them now and will cause them to break apart. We know in the intel, Eddie specifically wanted to do some horrible, sick things to Krafft under his instruction when he was being interrogated by Franco, the French Syndicate, and Ravenov.
You have the information I sent on how best to ensure Krafft talks, yes?
Yes, it's very specific. You're one sick fuck, aren't you?
Perhaps. But my methods get results.
Look, I go down this road. It will get messy. You sure you want this? I mean, considering your history with Krafft.
Our history is of no concern to you. Concentrate on the task, stick to my instructions, and get it done. Understood?
Understood.
This all explains it, because maybe Krafft did horrible things in him trying to do good, of ridding his memories. He did some horrible experiments on him and horrible brainwashing. And this can also explain why in the ending cutscene, Krafft shows remorse for the way Eddie is now, because he may be very well aware that Krafft may have actually played an integral role into causing Eddie to go down this horrible route again. It makes complete sense. This is why these lines mirrored what was happening before to unlock Samantha's powers, and mirrored the campaigns. This is where Eddie first learned of MK Ultra, from literally experiencing it firsthand, and now he is perpetuating the cycle of trauma by doing the same trauma to others that Krafft inflicted on himself. And once again, when he was doing it on Samantha, he was doing it under the guise of it being for a noble cause, in trying to save his family and trapping the Forsaken, whilst also getting revenge on her. So Eddie went with Krafft to America, while Samantha seemingly ended up remaining and growing up in Germany, as she always had. And yeah, it's really sad that Krafft dies here. I had no idea he was actually going to survive through into this storyline. It's crazy. When we played Vanguard Zombies, we had no idea it was going to be so important, but it's so emotional seeing his last second, seeing his remorse. He empathizes and he knows the pain Eddie is in, despite the fact that he has created a monster, or at least continued a monster, which was further amplified when Samantha and Weaver burnt his family. It all makes complete sense how Richtofen got into magic and demonology. We were thinking he was more of a scientific man, a doctor like in the original story, but his first influence in this new universe may have come from the more magical side, although the lines are very blurred, of course. So despite Krafft extending his life with his knowledge of the Dark Ether, he died as quickly as he returned. It's kind of crazy. They gave him extended life to integrate him into the Black Ops 6 storyline, and then they just killed him off straight away. I do wish he lived on for at least a bit longer, because it kind of negates the fact of him living longer. I guess it's all for the big plot twist of him raising Eddie and allowing him to do so. I really wonder if that was the original plan as well when writing Vanguard Zombies, or if this was retroactively concocted. And this can explain why his accent is a blur between German and American, because he was American in the house, but he was raised by Krafft in Germany before being taken to America. Now, not in the ending cutscene itself, but there is actually another cutscene that you get specifically for playing as Maya, not part of the main quest, just a little side thing you can do where she manages to catch up on her target, Syndicate head Franco, that I just mentioned. mentioned. If you play as Maya, you can unlock this door, allowing you to face a little boss fight against a HVT doppelganger named Laurent. Laurent is actually the character that is named offhandedly in the intro cutscene for the map, who says to sound the alarms to Ravenov.
Check the alarm!
So once you kill it, Maya will then confront Franco, shooting him twice in the knees before killing him with a final shot. I'll play the full cutscene for you now.
Oh fuck! Oh fuck! Oh fuck! Okay. Okay. The door should keep her out.
Why won't you just fucking die?
Wait! Killing me won't bring your brother back. You know he wouldn't want this.
This isn't for Nathan. This is for me.
With her revenge mission against him now complete, what will Maya's goals look like in the future? The Digsite is nearby, so it's likely she will stick with our characters at least to there, but for what after that? Would she be willing to follow the characters across the world to West Virginia, so far from home, as we're going to Janus Towers and this mansion map that I mentioned before? Could she now want revenge on Eddie Richtofen bad enough to make this journey? Only time will tell. If she did not want to continue past the excavation site, it is possible that Ravenov could instead take her spot in the playable crew for the remaining maps. We know that Maya isn't with Requiem, at least by the time of their deaths in Urzikstan, but they were still in contact with Ravenov, plus Ravenov was already going to be an operator once back in Black Ops Cold War, however he never came out, and most people suggest this was due to the war in Ukraine, which never really made any sense because despite Ravenov being a Russian patriot, he was against Omega's ideals and against the horrible atrocities that they were doing. Either way, he's long since been disavowed by Russian society anyways. That's no longer a problem, surely, in making him an operator. I don't know why he's never gotten one. This could also make sense, as we know at some point in this game Ravenov is also going to be made basically immortal so that he can live up to the timeline of Modern Warfare zombies, similar to what happened to Krafft to give him extended life. Could it simply be that some magic in the Digsite will allow him to do this, or will this come from drinking the vials made of the Requiem's crew's essence of one of these vials, as we theorized in my Modern Warfare zombie story videos? Speaking of the Digsite, that's where we are heading next. Krafft lets our characters know that the amulet we found is the key for the Sentinel artifact itself that lies here. The concept of the artifact and its key obviously goes all the way back to the origins of the Chaos storyline, with Scarlet's necklace being the key for the first Sentinel artifact we encounter on Voyage of Despair.
There are always two, mind and the body, each made for the other. Lock and key. Without the mind, the body is but an artifact, a relic from an ancient civilization. Beautiful and priceless though it may be, it is utterly useless. Not unlike Pandora's box, the artifact cannot be opened without the proper key. Brute force accomplishes nothing. A hammer won't even leave a dent. It is completely impenetrable. But that is for protection, for he is sent on a journey, one that cannot be stopped once started. That is why they must have the key. They must open it by their own volition. They must wish to inflict peril upon themselves. After all, the artifact does not wish to be opened. It is protecting it. It is a guard, a sentinel.
So this is going to be the next map, and in it we will once again come to the same situation the Chaos crew start in. We have the key, but the Sentinel artifact itself remains out of reach. A lot of people were thinking we were going to find the Sentinel artifact on this map, and I was thinking it a bit, but the longer as time went on, it would make sense since we knew we were probably going to get another map in Avalon, that we would probably need a reason to go to another map here, so it's probably somewhere else, and what better place than the excavation site. So this sets up what seems to be the obvious map from the leaked map list around launch. At one point I was speculating maybe it could be a Digsite by Liberty Falls, but no, it's by Avalon. Completely wrong about the location, but obviously the maps were right because they literally leaked. Krafft tells us the artifact is there, but to be careful it does not consume us, likely warning the characters of the dangers of being trapped inside a Sentinel trial.
Though I myself have not seen the artifact opened, the evidence I've gathered tells across several civilizations, whether it's 2000 BC or 500 AD, the records are... What are the odds? It is incredible. When the artifact is unlocked, the same event, when mind and body are one, the trial, the test of one's worthiness. Once the challenger has announced themselves, is released, transforming the environment around it to the trial's requirements. 8 ways are locked. Life is and death. Puzzles and riddles must be solved. But the trial does not abandon you to certain death. No. The gods watch over you. Tools of survival are provided. It is as if the trial wants you to succeed. And succeed you must. For once the trial is activated, you are locked in until completion. It is either victory or...
And I will be making a whole video as well talking about the Chaos story in this map, because it does seem like the videos I was talking about where I think the entirety of Chaos happened in this new timeline are in fact true from everything we've heard from Alistair Rhodes. In a Sentinel trial, those who take part are then trapped inside until they finish it or die trying. Perhaps Krafft simply meant to be careful to not get stuck inside the trial forever, but the verbiage, consume, seems to imply the artifact here could absorb them outright, or take their life energy somehow. It remains to be seen, but considering we have never seen this Sentinel artifact before, the idea it has some power we do not yet understand is not out of question.
I'd like to begin by expressing my gratitude for your eagerness, Sir Archibald.
Nonsense, old boy. I won't hear a word of it. I'd be a fool and a rank amateur to pass on an opportunity to collaborate. Your research is so thorough, not to mention groundbreaking.
Yes. Well, your endeavor is integral to my work, and we will both reap the benefits. Now, it's of vital importance that you don't let the reputation of the place color your senses.
Yes, I've been conducting inquiries as to the procurement of local workers, but thus far it's all been coming up a little empty. As far as I can tell, no one wants a damn thing to do with the place. If you ask me, the whole thing smacks of hysteria, which, between us, could be quite the positive, what? Makes it more likely the site's not been looted already.
Indeed. I'll shoulder the cost for you to recruit outside the area. Some sturdy ruffians is what's called for. You'll need the muscle. Given the amount I'm shelling out, I expect you to run a tight ship, Sir Archibald. This excavation is to be efficient, targeted, discreet, and do not return without the artifact in hand.
You have no fear. I wouldn't dream of it. We Fotherington Smythes are a tenacious lot once we set our minds to something.
Good man. I wish you luck on your travels. I imagine we'll be much changed the next time we see one another. Now, another spot of port.
Rather.
And this means we may finally be doing a trial on the map like some thought we might be doing on Citadelle, meaning that prima materia could cause the zombies, consuming them, as Krafft warns us of. He's very scared of the power of the Sentinel artifact and it consuming us. This could be a very, very different map, maybe even more Chaos themed than Citadelle, before going back to Liberty Falls, where we may get more blends of the scientific side and the magic side, especially with magic being influenced in Richtofen's early life with Krafft, and we know the mansion is haunted. Clearly, the stuff that was going on there is the blend of the both. And Weaver says to Krafft in the cutscene, we know Richtofen contacted you because obviously he was having the Syndicate interrogating him, but he was not giving in, he was withstanding the beatings and not giving the information up, but he gives it to them. But regardless, Krafft wouldn't be able to give any information anyway since the Sam AI teleported him into the Dark Ether. Since we're going back to Liberty Falls, are we just going to teleport there at the end of the Easter egg or something like that by the Sam AI, whether it be a god or a demon on the map, or a rift, or something to do with the crazy place, providing a gateway to get back there as we go after and locate Richtofen? Someone needs to let us know about Richtofen being there though, or maybe Sam herself needs us to go back there and so sends us. And also, this is a new Sentinel artifact. If we look, it does seem to be a new god, one that we have not seen in the Chaos story, and I'll be making future videos about it because it has me thinking, what if this could even be the Janus god, hence why Project Janus is called Project Janus. And we know Janus is the god of beginnings, transitions, gateways, endings, beginnings, so it would make total sense if this is actually the first one, Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man recombined, and maybe it wants to restore the multiverse. That would be a crazy plot twist. I have no idea if that's going to be true, but how neatly would that tie everything up with the original characters returning as well? And the Keepers obviously were the first ones to create the dimensions and interdimensional travel, and they were the first being in the universe, and then they needed to be purged at the end of the universe, exactly like Janus. And maybe Janus, if it is in fact the first one, reached out to the Romans to try and convince them to corrupt and free it. But let's talk about Digsite specifically. With us now on our way to Digsite in the French nation of Avalon, it leaves an obvious question hanging in the air, one I've seen many people pose in my comments of my cutscene video already and on Twitter. Does this mean an Origins remake? Could we be seeing similar themes to the Origins Digsite in the way that Liberty Falls is reminiscent of Town from Black Ops 2, and Citadelle is very similar to Der Eisendrache? And with Citadelle being a spiritual successor to Der Eisendrache, it is interesting because that too was the battleground of the Great War, at least in some of the universes. But now we have a castle in the Digsite side by side in France instead of the castle in Austria. And Der Eisendrache similarly had the Primis statues just like on Origins. Well, there's a decent chunk of circumstantial evidence here that we just might be going to Origins, but I don't think it's going to be the Origins. I think it's going to be a thematic sequel to Origins, but not the Origins. I think it's going to be an entirely new map. It'll probably be a spiritual successor to Origins, a new version in this universe. Because in the intel for the game, we actually have a document where we see Digsite. We literally see it here. I'll be making a whole video about Digsite in the future, this excavation site, and you can clearly see that it's not Origins. But you might have actually seen this location before because I've shown it on my channel, because if you actually glitch out of the multiplayer maps that are set in Avalon, you can explore it, and there is a location of a dig site now on top of a hill, and this is actually the exact spot that we see in this image, so I think this is going to be the zombies map. Now to the left of it is actually the dig multiplayer map, so I don't think that's going to be part of the zombies experience. I think it's just going to be this little area. What I'm thinking is it might just be a small map, or maybe this is just a small little spawn room, but then most of the map is all underground in this hill, and we go deep in all of these tunnels, kind of like buried or something like that, or the tunnels on Origins. I don't think it's going to be Origins, but I think we're seeing a repeat of Origins in the storyline. It kind of feels like we've never left the cycle, and everything is beginning to repeat once again. Origins was Digsite 64. I think this might actually be in the new universe, the literal same location as Origins, but it's just nothing alike, and obviously that was in the early 1900s. We're now in the 90s, so even if it was similar, it would be different. And there's a bunch of evidence to suggest here that this is going to be a thematic retelling of Origins, but like I say, not a remake in that sense. As established, obviously the map is literally a dig site in France, exactly where Origins was, and they do say that it's very close to where we are on Citadelle des Morts, so it's literally going to be down the road. Now, yes, it does seem to be in this Warzone map, and Treg did say that they're going to be having solely original maps for this game, so you could argue, well, this is kind of backtracking on their theory, but what I'm wondering, if this is going to be available in Avalon in Warzone next year, maybe we can just access the top pits that we can see, the spawn area, and maybe the entire underground section is basically the majority of the zombies map, like I say, as we do see that there's all of these mines and stuff like that, and you also see these ritual podiums and all sorts of stuff, so I can't wait to see all of the chaos elements coming back on this, and the demonology kind of stuff, and the magic. I can't wait. But yeah, maybe most of the map is underground, but that's just blocked off in Warzone, so you can really only scratch the surface in the Warzone experience. Now, not to mention, in the intel for the game are mentions of the 4 bastard sons now set up as still unnamed mythological figures here in Avalon, the bastard sons of the Owl. Now, I'm going to be making a whole video talking about the original characters because I'm pretty sure this is referencing the original characters because they are literally Templar Knights, just like Primis were, that worked for the Owl this time instead of the Wolf King. Very thematically similar, so like I say, I feel like the cycle is repeating here. The original characters might already have existed in this new universe in some way, but I'm going to be making a whole video in the future, like I say, because it's really confusing, but I'm pretty sure this is referencing the original characters because usually when Treyarch do not name characters, it's for a very specific reason. And what are the chances there are 4 medieval knights, just like Primis, that fought in the battlegrounds of northern France, just like Origins, and we are coming back to this spot years later? It has to be the original characters, and I can't believe that Treyarch are teasing this so early. And if they are the original characters, I'll talk about which animals they may be correlated to, but it's crazy to think they may have fought with these elemental swords this time instead of the elemental staffs. Or maybe even both. We know they use bows too. And it's very possible their burial grounds could in fact be in this Digsite. A burial ground for the 4 men could offer ample opportunity for Treyarch to visually call back to Origins, potentially even with the statues of the Primis characters simply being replaced by the 4 sons. Now, it is very well possible, like I say, maybe these 4 sons may not be the original characters, but it just seems like such a connection here. But at the same time, maybe it's not the original characters, but it could be their thematic replacements, if that makes sense.
Sir Guy de Saint-Michel, known to most as the Owl, the man who may have single-handedly destroyed the legendary Knights Templar. Guy was the leading expert of his day in all matters occult. His prowess in the dark arts won him his Nightbird sobriquet. That reputation made it easy to accuse the Templars of heresy, and while their leadership was burned at the stake, the Owl escaped to Avalon. But he would have never succeeded without his bastards. 4 sons who stopped at nothing to win his favor. The true names are lost to history, but their noms de guerre still inspire fear and hatred. The Stag was his shock trooper, striking like lightning when least expected. The Dragon's scorched earth tactics betrayed his reptilian lack of mercy. The Lion was the brightest of the 4, always keen to please his master. And the Raven, like his father, was a creature of the shadows. And although they served him faithfully, the Owl would never acknowledge their birthright, much less knight them. Nor would he give them what they desired most: love, respect, recognition. They were useful as thugs, enforcers. Sadly, all relationships, even those built on love, respect, and recognition, will break in time. But the Bastard's reign of terror in what would become Avalon echoed through the ages, giving rise to the French Syndicate.
Plus, a closer look at the Guardian boss fight reveals something very interesting and in my opinion quite substantial. As you see in this area on the stones, the large ones all around the edge of the boss fight arena, very familiar circular symbol patterns are on them. These patterns show us exactly where they are, as they match almost perfectly the patterns on the stones in the Crazy Place in Origins once again. And where was the Crazy Place, mind you? Once again, nearby / underneath Origins, underground. This to me seems to suggest that we may be going, like say, to a sort of reimagining of Origins as our next map, but just as we see, this new version of the Crazy Place looks very different to the original, so it might just be a thematic sequel to Origins, but not, you know, a remake, a one-to-one map with the same layout. I think it'll be a completely different layout as we've seen from the Warzone experience. But the Crazy Place was a gateway to Agartha in the old universe, but Agartha no longer exists, so I guess it's just a gateway into the Dark Ether now. I wonder if maybe that's not even the full Crazy Place and more of it could be uncovered underground in Digsite. But speaking of these 4 bastards replacing the original characters in the new Origins, like say, what if they aren't a replacement at all? Some lines of dialogue and the fact their names are lost to time seem to indicate a decent possibility that these characters could in fact be some version version of the original characters, whether they are from after the events of Tag the Toten, or this universe somehow existed before and they were wiped out of existence afterwards, thus explaining their names being forgotten and currently being unknown. It's very odd that they would never have names, and it makes sense that they would be bastards just as Richtofen is because of Krafft adopting him. They did not have parents in this new universe. They had no one, as they would have been sent back to the beginning of the Great War as they did in the cycle. What I'm thinking is, if these are the original characters, it wouldn't make sense, because as far as we're aware, even if the original characters are planned to return, they haven't returned yet. But what if, instead of a new universe being created when Nikolai used the Agathan device, what if it just plucked one universe out of the multiverse and then it collapsed all of the other universes into the dark ether? And that would mean that there would still be a version of the original characters that fought in the Great War in this universe. Of course, events play out differently because we're in a multiverse, so that's why Origins is nothing like it was before. This would be a completely different version of the original crew that we've never seen before. Maybe they still were in this universe, but when the characters killed themselves and purged their existence, they then got wiped from this timeline, because the fact that Samantha and Eddie come into this new world in the 1950s means that it's literally existed for billions of years, and it's a very specific date. If it's existed for billions of years, it kind of suggests that the universe already existed for a long time, and then they were just sent into this universe that already existed, as opposed to it being a completely new universe. And it can explain why everything is returning, and maybe even we're stuck in another cycle again. That would be a huge plot twist that we've never managed to actually truly escape it. But whether they are from after the events of Tag the Toten or this universe somehow existed before and they were wiped out of existence, I do believe there is enough of a conversation to be had here that will make a whole video about this too if you are interested, so let me know in the comments. With all that covered, I believe we've touched on the large scale story threads that are either introduced or wrapped up in Citadelle Day more. In the coming days and weeks, expect more deep dives into specific topics and intels, and perhaps more long-form conversations about things we've discussed today. I just wanted to get out this quick video discussing Eddie and Krafft's parentage confirmation and glossing over what I felt like were some important beats so that everyone could get on the same page. If you have any questions about the Citadelle more storyline or want anything more specific covered, let me know in the comments. If not, we'll have a big Citadelle lore video going over the four bastards, sons in more detail, and the potential connections to the original characters, as well as going deeper into Digsite and the other DLC maps. But without further ado, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not for latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye.